Oh, great day, everybody. This is Savon Springer with a bit of the block here in the Third Academy campus. And we're going to kick it off today. And we're going to kick it off with some very fundamental information, a fundamental topic. Because if one is interested in digital assets and the blockchain sector, DLT, Web3, pick your flavor, right? Self custody is one of the core tenets of this entire sector, this entire industry. Yet, it is one of the most complicated, one of the most troublesome and problematic for people to really wrap their heads around, both what it is as well as how to achieve it, let alone the benefits of it. So, that's what we're going to talk about today. This is meant to be approachable as we can make it, while also covering some of the nuances. So I will go ahead and yield for a second, but that is what we're going to get into today. And so what we'll do is go ahead, take a few moments here, and then we'll be right back in about 30 seconds, and we'll go ahead and jump into it. Okay, y'all. So I'm talking to like the Third Academy crew right here. So in post, we might need to delete this out. But I um requested to speak in the Twitter space. So now I'm not sure if we are doing this in the campus and then later it's going to go to the Twitter space, but I'm not actively speaking in the Twitter space, which is why I gave that little pause. Okay. Here we go. All right. Cool. All right, bet. Uh, okay. Okay. This was the intention, right, to figure this out. But running into a mild issue where there's no way to actually silence my phone entirely, but I need to keep it close enough that you can hear what I'm saying, unless this audio is being fed through. But yeah, what have y'all typically done to reconcile that with other speakers? Oh, okay. Okay. Definitely didn't realize that. All right, cool. So I will go ahead and put my phone to the side and mute it. And awesome. This is why we do these things. Perfect. Okay. All right. We're ready to go, y'all. And let's start at the start. So, what is self custody? Self custody is exactly what it sounds like. But really, fundamentally, what it means is taking control of an asset directly instead of allowing someone to control or maintain possession of that asset on your behalf. Now, if a mental model that may be helpful for this is an investment account, whether that be an IRA, whether that be a 401k, when you go through a brokerage and you buy a share of an index fund or of a stock, or you buy a bond or something like that, you are actually allowing that brokerage to maintain possession of that investment vehicle, that investment contract on your behalf. Now, there are a lot of benefits to this, but there are, quote unquote, some risk to this as well. And generally, that risk is known as third party or counterparty risk. And effectively, what it speaks to is the chance or the potential that there be some undesirable action or event that happens with that third party that jeopardizes your access or ability to access your assets. And traditionally, in the investment world, when it comes to IRAs, in any sort of investment contracts, that is the only route to go about it in most cases, um, where you use a brokerage and that broker is the custodian for you. And in a lot of situations, this is actually best for most people because they handle the heavy lifting. And what I mean by that is they take care of the security, they take care of abiding by the regulations that oversee those vehicles, all of those sorts of things. Now, if we translate that over to the world of digital assets, it becomes a different question. Now, part of the benefit of self custody in this space, that being blockchain, Web3, all of that, is that you are better positioned to take direct custody and hold that asset directly. And again, you have options, but it's important to understand the risks that are being taken on if you do choose to leave the asset with somebody else. And by default, when you get into the space, if you use something like Coinbase or some other centralized exchange, you are going through a third party to acquire the asset. And then inside of your account, it is being controlled, managed, held by a third party, just like is the case with these brokerage accounts. But you have the ability to take what is known as self custody of those assets. Now, the way that you do that, there's two primary ways. One is you can move that asset into what is known as a hot wallet, or you can move it into something known as a cold wallet, but it's commonly referred to as cold storage. Now, in both situations, it requires you to have control of your private keys. And this, again, is another concept that is, it's not entirely new. There are private and public keys associated with a lot of different things outside of this space as well. It's more of a cryptography and security um, phenomena. But long story short, control of your private keys means you have the ability to control those assets and dictate where they are sent to or not sent to. And the public key is basically what you share with somebody else so that they know how to send assets to you or that assets came from you. Um, so we'll pivot back over to the idea of the cold and the hot storage. This also relates to wallets. So words that you may hear thrown around, storage, wallets, you can think of them in a way as synonyms. If you have something in cold storage, that cold storage is indeed a wallet. And if you have something in a wallet, it is being stored there as well. Now, in this entire industry, the two most popular options that you have are MetaMask for a hot wallet solution. Generally, if people are actively using something, they use the term wallet. If the idea is to hold it there but not really spend from it, then it's usually deemed storage. Um, I digress. So you have MetaMask as the hot wallet solution. And then you also have Ledger, which is a cold storage solution. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that typically, well, let me back up a second. If you want to actually do anything with your assets and not just hold them, you're generally going to need or require a wallet to interact with, for instance, a decentralized application, right? Let's say you want to use an automated market maker like Uniswap. Well, you're going to need to be able to send your funds to your wallet from wherever you initially purchased them if you did not purchase them directly in your wallet. Um, and you're going to need to have some Ethereum or some other asset inside of your wallet so that you can then connect to Uniswap or some other DEX and then execute your trade. So, in general, that is the value and the use case of something like a hot wallet is the ability to actively use that wallet to engage in different sort of activities with those assets. Cold storage, on the other hand, is generally speaking more ideal for assets that you want to hold on to longer term, but you don't plan to use on a frequent basis. That is kind of where the word of hot and cold it points to a little bit, but the real idea of hot meaning that it is actively connected to the internet, whereas cold means it is not connected to the internet. And that is important for security reasons. Of course, if something is connected to the internet, it means it has the ability to be hacked far more easily. If something is disconnected from the internet and cold, then it is much harder to hack. Um, Now, in both of these situations, there was something known as a seed phrase or recovery phrase. And what this really allows for and does, it gives you the ability to back up the information in this wallet. And that's important because these being digital assets, you want to make sure that you can recover these or access these should something change. Think about if you have a password on any sort of account, like a Gmail or something else like that. You make the account, but you're also able to reset your password down the road if you forget your password. Now, it's not a one to one, but in that same event, if for some reason you forgot your password, let's say, to your wallet or your, whether that be the hot wallet or the cold storage, um, or you, particularly in the case of something like a ledger or a cold storage wallet, if you lose the physical device, then this recovery phrase allows you to get a new device and then recover those funds that you had on the prior device. And with a hot wallet, something like a MetaMask, if for some reason you lost your computer or access to the computer where you initially instantiated that wallet, your recovery phrase is going to allow you to bring it back up on any new device. Now, the thing about recovery phrases, though, if you lose that recovery phrase and you don't have access to the wallet, whether that be the hot wallet or the cold storage wallet, it's a tough day. It's a tough day for you, assuming you have some assets in there. If you don't have any assets in there, then I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. But let's assume you had a little bit of something in there. It is vitally important that you maintain um, security and possession of that recovery phrase, that seed phrase. And also, it's really important that you don't share it with anybody. Growing up, we're all told, we're explaining the idea of secrets. Sometimes you share a secret with a close friend. It might be something personal about yourself. It might be some other sort of information, a dream you have, an aspiration, right? Whatever it might be. But sometimes you tell one person the secret, you tell somebody else the secret. Then for you know it ain't a secret anymore. It's on Front Street. Everybody knows. When it comes to seed phrases, recovery phrases, these should actually be secrets. You don't share these with people. You don't give these to people. You take care of it yourself. Okay? Now, I'll pause for a second. Are there any questions at this point? 'Cause I just been a talking. I want to pause. See, because we've already covered a lot of it. I can dive into some more nuance, but temp check. Okay? Nay. Okay. So there are now high level, that is, broad strokes.
You've been spot on so far. I'm inspired to hear what else you have to tell us.
Word. Okay. So the nuances that are involved with self custody, we've talked a little bit about them with MetaMask being a hot wallet and really ideally what it's used for, primarily connecting and interacting with other applications that need access to your funds or your wallet. And then cold storage being really where you want to hold on to things long term. Some people they treat Ethereum or Bitcoin or some other of these assets as something that they want to hold on to for many, many years. And if that's the case, then cold storage is really ideal for that and is very secure for it. Now, the other thing that I want to mention in all fairness is that Ledger is not the only cold storage provider. You have things like Cold Card, you have things like KeepKey, You have things like the Trezor wallet, and there are even some other ones. The Arculus card. There are many, but by and large, Ledger is the biggest, most notable company. But some of their code that they use is not open source. And that is why some people choose not to use them because they feel like, hey, if this isn't open source, then I technically don't have full visibility into how this works. And on the contrary, things like the code card, it is open sourced. And so some people who, for comfortability's sake, would rather know exactly what's going on and what's happening under the hood, they opt for that solution. Now, I personally have only ever used a ledger. Um, so maybe I'm lazy. I don't know, but it's always worked for me. And I have confidence that they are indeed acting in good faith. But I think it's important for people to know that. And if, particularly if you're a risk mitigator, then you might find it prudent to use several of these options. One, so that you get familiar with how the different ones work, but two, so that if there were ever a situation where, let's just say, Ledger got compromised or any of these other companies got compromised, then you don't have all the eggs in that company's basket or that piece of hardware's basket, even if you split them across different devices. Which brings me to another point. It's another good practice once you get past, everybody's threshold is different, but um, at some point, it is likely prudent to have multiple hardware devices instead of just one. That way, let's just say, you get up to a Bitcoin and then you go ahead and say, all right, cool. I don't ever want to have any more than one Bitcoin on a particular hardware device. Or maybe it's two, or maybe that's 10 Ethereum, 32 Ethereum, whatever it is, or ETH. Um, it's only up to you to make that decision. But it is a practice that some people abide by. Personally, something I like to do, right, is have one option that primarily holds my NFTs, and I have another option that really holds my crypto on it. So that's just something personally that I do. Now, another nuance. Oh, also, let's take a quick break and let's not break, but let's go ahead and move this outdoors. Get some fresh air. Do, 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 do.
This is fun. I'm gonna. What?
Hey, oh, for sure, for sure. On beautiful days, you just why sit inside? Sit inside so okay.
Even have dogs joining us.
I know that what it sounded like. Okay. So other nuance point when it comes to hot wallets, things like MetaMask. By default, MetaMask wallets are accessible through an internet connection. Generally, you download it. It's a browser extension, and that's how it interacts with. It lives as this extension, and when you want to use a D app, you click the little wallet connect button or something similar, and then boom, you're in there like swimwear. So same thing. MetaMask is not the only hot wallet. It's not the only browser extension wallet. It is the most popular one, but there are other options. And depending on the chain that you are using, that will often dictate what options are available to you. For instance, on Solana, the most popular wallet is not MetaMask, it is Phantom. And on Sui, shout out to Sui. Also, full disclosure, I work at Miston Labs, so shout out, gang, gang. But good to educate people. A lot of chains out here. But on Sui, you have Ethos Wallet, you have Sui Wallet, you have Easy Wallet, right? So every chain, every network that you use is going to have a number of chains. There's Martian Wallet. There's things like this. So MetaMask is the tried and true. It's the equivalent of, let's call it, the ledger for EVM chains, even some non-EVM chains. But it is not the only option you have. Again, for different reasons, some people may choose to use one over the other. For instance, some people don't love that MetaMask at this point makes you agree to certain terms and conditions that one could say are not very decentralized in their ethos. But MetaMask is owned by Consensus, and Consensus is a major conglomerate company, so they are going to abide by the rules and be as risk averse as they can for a company that develops infrastructure in this space. So understandable from a business decision standpoint, but worthwhile to make note of. Now, the thing that's really key is that you can actually combine your Ledger wallet with your MetaMask. Crazy. I know. If anybody used to watch Dragon Ball Z growing up, it's like when Gohan and Trunks they do the fusion dance. They like do the two step, then they come in and they're like, "Zhoo," and then they like turn into one person. So obviously, it's not the exact same thing. But what you can do is actually use your hardware wallet as a mechanism to further secure your MetaMask wallet. And I would recommend it. I would definitely recommend it because then it makes it so that you have the hardware security of your MetaMask. Um, and I get it. In certain situations, some people may feel like it's a little bit cumbersome, but ultimately, you have to decide um, how you feel about your security practices and what you're doing on a day in, day out perspective as it relates to your trading activity or just your general activity and use of the various applications within the ecosystem. Okay, again, I'll go ahead pause because I've covered most of what needed to be covered. Any anybody want to add anything? Any questions?
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Bluetooth connectivity for your hardware wallet and how you go?
Ah, yes, thank you, Stacy. I almost overlooked that. Okay, so this is again one of those things where if you want the convenience, usually convenience comes at a cost. And in this space, convenience is almost directly correlated with attack vectors or vulnerabilities. And so when Ledger first came out, they had what was known as the Ledger Nano S. It was the first device that they put out. And you can still get one, it still works. Actually, they may have deprecated the S and they have the S Plus now, which has more memory. Either way, the S was purely you had to connect it using a USB cable. But then they released a couple years after they put the first version out, the Nano X. And the Nano X is able to work over Bluetooth. So you can still connect it with a cable, but the intention was to allow it to be able to work with phones because some people wanted to manage their assets or interact with some of these dApps on the go using their phone. And so Bluetooth is what allows that. However, if something is able to function off Bluetooth, it means it can function wirelessly, which means that somebody can also access it wirelessly. Now, is hacking Bluetooth as easy as it is to hack an internet connection? I honestly don't know. It might be easier. I don't know. But it is definitely technically more vulnerable to different kinds of attacks than something that is purely accessible through a hardware connection directly. So that's something that is worthwhile to note. So thank you very much for bringing that up, Stacey.
Yeah, no, it's something that people I know have been talking about. And I think it really has to do with your level of play in the crypto space and your level of risk or risk adversity that you're into.
100%. And similarly to cell phones, where people generally folks who are prominent or they are involved with large companies, they're usually at any given moment the subject or the target of SIM swap attacks, which is basically where people make a clone of your SIM card and then they're able to get access to your phone and your phone account. And there are just some different ways you can go about mitigating those risks, some of which you have to get directly in contact with your cell phone carrier to minimize it. But I would say that if you're someone who travels a lot, or you're somebody who is high profile, or you're someone who has, a substantial amount of value in these assets, um, it is definitely something worth considering that perhaps, when you are on the go, um, yeah, a phone is real convenient, but it's not that hard to connect a uh, USB cable to a laptop either. And sometimes that convenience may not be quite worth it. If I recall correctly, a few months ago, Kevin Rose got hacked and lost a few 100,000 worth of NFTs. And if that is indeed correct, you know, it's the more prominent you get and the more public you are, it can often become more difficult to really maintain immaculate security practices because people who are motivated enough, they just need a thread. They need a thread to pull out, and if they can pull at that thread the right way, orchestrate some social attacks, so on and so forth, then it can put your assets in jeopardy. So, you know, as Stacy, as you just said, you have to see your own situation to make the best decision for you. But there are options.
Yeah, I love that. I think you did a really great job at portraying clearly what our different options are and how they work. And I think that, one of the things that are really interesting for me, and we talk about security and people that are high profile, there's kind of this occurrence of pseudonyms in Web3 space. And a lot of people outside of Web3 think, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's odd. It's that ego, but it really is some of the people that I know that use pseudonyms, so a way that they're trying to safeguard themselves from attacks. And it's a really interesting time. What do you think are what do you think the real risk of an attack is? Do you think it's more perceived and populated in press, or do you think that the average person really has to be concerned?
Are you leading the witness there, Stacy?
I will not confirm or deny anything, sir.
So no, I mean, frankly, the biggest risk that people pose, or that people are faced with, is the risk of themselves. And far more people, have been, you know, uh, they've lost their seed phrases, and that has caused them anguish or some sort of loss of value. That is exceedingly more common than people being hacked or targeted by people who want to hack them. So that is why earlier I tried to allude to the fact that these seed phrases are nothing to joke around about. And actually, thank you for bringing that up. I can go into some other solutions for people, um, that's more of a middle ground. But when it comes to your seed phrase, that is in a lot of ways the end all be all of your wallet. And that is the other reason why, at a certain point, it is valuable to have multiple wallets, because that way, if there were to be some sort of compromise, not all of the funds are in a wallet. And another thing that's important to call out is that wallets are wallets can hold an infinite number of accounts, basically. I don't know if that's like technically true, but I'm pretty sure it is. And what I mean by that is a wallet, we got to find some better words for these things, but a wallet in and of itself houses multiple accounts. And so you can have one wallet and have one account, and that account is basically an address. It's an address on chain that things can be sent to, that can hold assets, that can send assets out. And each of those have keys connected to them. Um, but there's often the case where somebody has one wallet, and this might be for cost reasons. They don't want to spend the money on several hardware wallets at one time, um, and so it winds up in a situation where they create multiple addresses, i.e., multiple accounts under that one wallet. So if anything happens to that one wallet, everything in that wallet gets compromised, not just one account, every account that was tied to that wallet, tied to that recovery phrase. So, again, that's the importance and the value of having multiple wallets, um, so that it can mitigate that risk. Now, something else that is a solid option for people is to actually go the multi party route. And so what this is basically is it's a method in which, instead of you being the only person in control of this wallet or these keys, you actually divide pieces of it to multiple people. So way you can think about it is, uh if anybody grew up watching some of these spy movies, they would have like a top secret operation, and it was two people required. They had to turn the key at the same time to get access. It's kind of like that. And I said multi-party. These are usually known as multi-signature wallets. And so Casa, like the Spanish for house, Casa, CASA. This is one company that, this is their core business, is they help people set up multi-signature wallets. And there's various ways you can do it. You can do two of three, you can do three of five, you can do five of seven. And basically, the higher that number, it means that the more counterparties are required to be in accordance to make some sort of change uh, to or control the assets themselves. Now, again, these solutions exist, but once more, as we've already talked about, there's a slider on the convenience um, factor where the more convenient it is, you are technically opening yourself up to different exposure to counterparty risk. But at least with using multi-sig wallets, you're in that middle ground between doing full self-custody, which is as extreme as you can go, besides like running your own node, um, and the other extreme where it's just sitting on one centralized exchange. Because we've seen how that's played out for people who had accounts on FTX, for people who had accounts with Alex Mashinsky. I can't remember the name of his company right now. But with that company, we've seen it play out with people who made deposits for Gemini Earn. And this isn't to poke fingers at these companies. It is to highlight the reality that people had undergone when they offloaded this counterparty risk because they felt it was more convenient. And at the end of the day, what's more convenient? Having your assets or losing them because you thought it was too hard to write down some words and keep hold of them. So, yeah, that
Dave,
is yes.
I have another question. That was a great answer, and so far I've learned a lot. Relatively new to crypto, have account with, let's say, Coinbase, and when you get an account with Coinbase, you have to tie your account to your bank account to transfer money either way. What is the security risk in tying your personal bank account to your wallet at a place like Coinbase?
Interesting question. Thank you for that, Mike. So the thing about that is it raises general questions about the security of fintech companies, right? A lot of people have seen Plaid, have seen Stripe, and they have very deep integrations across people's accounts. And what I'll say, as we work through this, to think about it, is how many times has an individual gotten an email or read an article about some leak from Experian or something else of that nature, where all of a sudden, shit, damn, we accidentally let loose access to, a few 100,000 social security numbers, but yeah, we're working on it. We're fixing it though. So we'll do this little class action. We'll give you about 14 cents and 3 months free of our identity lock or service, something like that. And I bring that up because sometimes I don't think it's really appreciated how generally, on a day-to-day basis, these things are secure and they function, but all it takes is one time for there to be a breach. And now somebody may have, gained access to your social security number or bought it, from some third party on the on the black market. And now they're out there, stealing your identity or getting credit cards in your name. So it happens. And it's happened before this industry ever really grew legs. And so the way that the regulatory system is being set up, there is really no way, or there are increasingly fewer ways, and to get into this industry, i.e., buy or acquire cryptocurrency without there being some sort of linkage back to your real world identity. Um, and in fact, literally today, a friend of mine, my roommate from college, he called me to ask how he could take some cash and acquire some Bitcoin, um, and without using his bank account. And I was trying to walk him through it, and I was like, man, I mean, maybe you can jump on local Bitcoins or do something like that. But the only thing that really could come to mind at the end of the day was using a Bitcoin ATM. But even then, there's still going to be some sort of connection to you because usually to use those ATMs, they're going to ask for your ID or some other form of identification that is, personal PII, personally identifiable information. So going back to Stacy's point, this is why it is so common that certain people, whether they be whales or they be venture investors, they use pseudonyms because if they didn't, if you have the right access to the proper enclave of data, then you'd be able to associate their legal name with where they may have first on ramped. And for that same reason, again, it can be worthwhile for people to consider using a multitude of exchanges across different jurisdictions. You might want to use a US based exchange. You might also want to set up one that's based in Korea. You might want to set up one that's based in some other region of the world as well, just because they have different regulatory regimes, they have different data practices, so forth, so on and so forth. And it just allows you to spread out that risk surface area a bit.
That was a great answer, but it sounds so complicated. How is the industry grow if it has so many complexities to it, and expecting everybody to have aliases and to have some special way to protect their privacy sounds kind of daunting to the average person thinking about getting into this industry or into this Web3 world.
Yeah. Well, I think again it's kind of a matter of perspective, because like we're having this conversation and we're actually talking through the implications here. How many people outside of this industry have ever even talked about PII or what it actually means for them to, check out using PayPal or check out using Klarna or something else like that? Very rare. Very rare. The same sort of risk that we're talking about here, they're subject to the same risk in a lot of ways. Now, yeah, we don't wake up every day and hear that someone had their bank account at Bank of America or Chase or something to that extent hacked. But again, they also don't hold direct possession of those assets. At any point in time, those assets and access to those assets can be frozen. And we saw this actually take place in Canada not too long ago, where there was a group of individuals who were expressing how they felt about a situation, regardless of what somebody might feel about it politically. I don't care. It don't fucking matter, to be frank. They were expressing themselves, and what they witnessed was that they had access to their funds. Their money that was their money, quote unquote, was restricted. It was denied to them because they were speaking in a way that their particular regulatory regime, their government, did not approve of, did not endorse. And so they were using financial censorship as a means to punish them. And that only works if their assets, if their money is in a vehicle with a counterparty who has the ability to freeze it. And again, most people are not having this conversation. And we saw as well, again, I don't care your politics. Take those out of the equation. We saw what happened when the Russia-Ukraine conflict began. And all of a sudden, Russia was kicked out of the SWIFT payment network. And for those who don't know what SWIFT is, it is a global system to be able to send money back and forth between financial institutions for settlement. And all of a sudden, one flick of a switch, I don't know, maybe it was a flick of 7 switches. I don't know the actual operational process, right? But they were barred access to that system. Why? Because they don't actually have direct custody of those assets, nor do they have a means to directly exchange with somebody else in a peer-to-peer manner. And so thank you so much for raising this point, Mike, because it brought us back to the core of why crypto ever got anyone's attention in the first place. Is because Bitcoin came out, and Bitcoin was the very first thing to be created that actually demonstrably enabled people to hold direct custody of this asset and then exchange it in a peer-to-peer fashion without any intermediary. And that fundamentally, if that is something you care about, if that is something that you think one day might be important, it may not be important 99.999% of the time, but if it's important 0.0001% of the time, then perhaps those hurdles, those challenges of taking self-custody are worth it. But at the same time, it actually isn't that complicated. Let's actually talk about what that process looks like. So you go ahead, you go on Coinbase, or you go to MoonPay, or something like that, and you want to buy some Bitcoin, you want to buy some ETH. All right, we can walk and talk. Is there a way to walk? I feel like the walking is fast. I don't want to walk quite this fast. Like I'm doing like a slight jog. With the sprint. What do I tap? Ah,
Yeah,
perfect. Thank
walk
you.
or go to the conference room. There might be some pizza.
All right, let's go look at this pizza that we can't eat.
Just try.
We could try. Okay. So, no pizza. All right, we posted about taco truck. Me gustan los tacos. Okay. So, if you want to get your hands on some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, my apologies, keep saying Ethereum, some ETH, some SWI, right? Some XRP, pick your flavor, whatever it is. You go to an exchange or you go to a fiat on ramp. Now that you're there, you go ahead, you throw in, if you haven't done it before, you create a little account. What are they going to ask you? They're going to ask you your name, your address. They may ask for your social security number if you're making creating an account on exchange, but they may not. Uh, and then they may ask for your driver's license. These days, they often ask for a photo to verify your identity. And mind you, these are all things that also happen when you sign up for some other payment services. This is not a crypto specific thing. This is KYC thing, which is a banking thing. And then you go ahead, you have that part done. Now, what you do is you go and you put in your payment information. So that can either be your routing and your account number, or it can just be a card that you want to pull it from. Boom, now you're set up. These are the same steps that you're usually going to make when you create an Amazon account, when you create a Target account or a PayPal account. Same things. Boom. So now you go, you choose whatever asset that you want to buy, you choose the amount, and then boom, you buy it. Now you own this asset, but you don't have direct self custody of it. The exchange does. So now you want to go ahead and take self custody. What do you do? Do you go into the woods? Do you cut down 14 red oaks? Then do you have to sand them to 500 grit, 440 grit, whatever it is, and then get a miter saw and chop it up and build a table and then take a picture of that. I'm being silly here. No, you don't have to do all of that. What you do is you go to your account, you click the asset, you hit send. There's a button that says send. And then you put in an address. The address is where you want it to go. So you find the address. That address is going to be very easily found in your MetaMask wallet. It is literally one of the first things that pops up. It's at the very top. Click copy. And on a ledger, very similar thing. You click copy, you paste it, and that's send.
Oh, he does that. I want to take that.
And then it winds up in that wallet. And now, boom, you have self-custody. Now, before you can set up your MetaMask or the hardware wallet, what you do is write down a seed phrase. That seed phrase is usually 12 words. It can be different than that, but let's say it's usually 12 words. You write those down. Ideally, it's going to ask you to confirm those words. You confirm those words, and then boom, you in action. That's what you got to do for self-custody. You can do the whole thing in less than 5 minutes. So, based on that conversation we just had, those examples we just alluded to, where people are being financially censored, and generally, sometimes people are in agreement with financial censorship, and that usually changes if they're ever the target of being financially censored. And if that matters at all to you, then it is probably worthwhile for you to go ahead and figure out how to do the self-custody thing. If that's too complicated, then you can call one of these other services like Akasa and set up a multi-sig wallet. But that's actually going to take longer in almost every case than it is to set up the self-custody wallet. But again, you do have the, call it the convenience of knowing that it is not fully on you to take care of that. But again, I can't make that determination for anybody. Only an individual can. And I will step off of my soapbox. And fly.
So just on this note, you had mentioned earlier about people running their own nodes. Do you want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages and the complexities of doing so?
Okay, we are now entering scope creep. I am not a node expert. This is what I can share. Running a node requires you to have dedicated hardware, that being a computer as well as a sufficient amount of memory in most situations. Uh, and beyond that, you're going to need to check the particular process or requirements for the network that you want to run a node on. You need to be aware of the fact that if your node goes down at some point, that there can be penalties to that occasionally, depending on what it is you're doing. Um, for instance, if you're acting as a validator node, um, or you're acting as some sort of node where staking rewards are being held. But generally, the main benefit is that you directly operate and have access to a record of the blockchain. Now, not everybody runs full nodes. Some people run archival nodes, which kind of take snapshots as opposed to like actually holding every single transaction that's been confirmed on the network. But as I said, I don't run a node currently. It's something that I had on my own personal roadmap, but I'm not in any rush to do so. But broadly speaking, those are some of the pros and cons. There's technical overhead, um, but pros being that you don't have to trust that somebody else's node is giving you the proper information. Okay. So we covered a whole lot of ground and we definitely talked about a bit more. We got probably into the 201, perhaps the 301 of self custody. So before we get out of here, anything else that you all want to touch on?
Do you have any predictions for us about how self custody will advance, or any visions that you hold that you'd like to see happen in the industry in that regard?
Ah, what a perfect layup you just gave me, Stacy. Thank you for that. So, as you would have it, Miston Labs, the company behind the Sui blockchain, is actually developing something by the name of ZK Login. And ZK Login is built on zero knowledge cryptography. And what it actually allows is for people to be able to instantiate a wallet, a self custody wallet, just by using their Gmail account, their Facebook account, their Twitch account, or any number of these single sign on options that people are very used to. If they lose their password, they can, or their seed phrase, they can reset it using the method in which they instantiated the wallet. And really, what this does is it makes it so that, let's say you're a company and you're going to issue some digital assets, or let's say that you're a big believer in Sui. I'm just using Sui because this is the network that it is operating on currently. And anybody, I'll do another one of these, and I'll go into the depths of Sui and Move, and why people should pay attention and not be maximals and think that ETH is the only option, because ETH has a whole lot of problems. But what it means is that I could send Sui or some stable token on the Sui network to a friend or a relative somewhere and send it to them in a self custody manner. They go and then they open up, let's say they get an email notification or something like that when I send it to them. And then all they would need to do is connect with one of those methods we mentioned: a Google account, a Facebook, a Twitch account. We're figuring out the way to enable this with Apple IDs and Apple accounts as well. And then they would actually be able to open that wallet. That will be a self custody wallet that has the Sui or the stable coins that I sent to them in the wallet pre-populated, all without them needing to use an exchange. And this opens up different applications where you can imagine a world where different developers or builders or companies are able to leverage this low friction to enable different experiences that do take advantage of self custody and being the direct owner and controller of the asset, whether that be crypto, whether that be something like NFT, whether it be some other relevant digital asset in and of itself. But I think that people are going to be really shocked at how we've designed and built this, and particularly as folks begin to expand upon that primitive because ZK Login itself is going to be open source. So we imagine there's going to be a fast follow of people beginning to try and reverse engineer it. But yeah, I just think that that is the way that things are moving, and we have demonstrated that that it's possible to do such.
Thanks for that. That's super exciting. Sivan, before we round up the rest of your show, can you tell us what we can expect from upcoming shows?
Absolutely. So really, the idea and the concept behind a bit of the block is to begin to take bites at different information that goes beyond the what someone might commonly come across when they look at this space. And more importantly, the idea is to give additional context and speak to the nuances that often get lost when people are writing SEO friendly, write ups, or they jump into a space and quite frankly they try to wave ride and don't actually know what they're talking about, or actually don't use the thing but realize they could get a check by talking about it as if they do. And so like we did today, we're generally going to start out at a high level, and then depending on how it goes, the questions that get asked, then we'll keep pulling at that thread until I'm at my wits' end or we're at time. But in particular, what I find important to talk about are fundamental things like self custody, why it matters, disintermediation. Also, at some point, likely going to talk about the financial system in more detail, that being the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, because it's important to know how those things operate to really appreciate what peer-to-peer payments means, but also other things like Bitcoin. I think that too often, we get caught up in the shiny objects and all the other cool things that seem a bit more dynamic or versatile that are in the broader blockchain space, and people, particularly folks who come in as newer cohorts, they have a lot of distance between the importance of what Bitcoin actually is and its position in the overall ecosystem. And so I definitely am going to spend some more time highlighting and speaking to it, um, and then just some other things that feel relevant that I can't necessarily predict ahead of time. I'll definitely talk about Sui and Move because also the goal is to make people more aware of things outside of the top five. And being someone who works in Miston, I have a lot more context and visibility to that particular ecosystem than most other people. So it would be silly for me not to speak to that. But yeah, those are a few things people can look forward to.
Super exciting. We cannot wait to have you back again and to perhaps even do more shows or workshops with you. So anytime you have inspiration, just keep us posted.
Absolutely, will do. Now, I see that the pizza has arrived inside the lounge, so I guess we're gonna go ahead and eat these pixels of pizza. All right, y'all. Thank you.
Woohoo! Thank you.
Absolutely, we'll do a lot.
I'm already in here. I couldn't wait.
That was awesome. Great job, Sivan.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Great questions.